Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Eco Girl here, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Pacific Islands. So I recently just did a talk to the Pacific Islanders United Club at Sacramento State University, and I did this talk on behalf of the Climate Reality Project. I came in and I talked about how their islands are being affected by climate change. Small island states in the Pacific are responsible for only 0.03% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions, and there's millions of people living on these islands and experiencing some of the earliest and most severe consequences of climate change. I mean, personally, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair that they are being the most affected and they are contributing to the least amount of greenhouse gases. Some areas that have once flooded every 100 years or so and that are home to 65 million people could be experiencing annual flooding by the year 2050. And 2050 is not that far from now. We are almost at 2020. I mean, that's 30 years from now. They could be experiencing annual flooding in these islands. So actually, the most near and long-term threat to these islands are the impacts of climate change on freshwater quality and availability. Some islands might run out of water before they run out of land. More frequent flooding because of the sea level rise will cause the ground to absorb that seawater and contaminate the island's aquifers. And in some cases will actually stop groundwater aquifers from fully recovering. And in many cases on these islands, these groundwater aquifers are their only source of fresh water. So with this comes depriving entire isolated islands of their sole source of drinking water. This will force residents to rely on rainfall and shipments alone. Also, hurricanes become more powerful as sea surface temperatures become warmer. More frequent flooding and harsher storms will drive powerful seawater surges inland. The problem with this is that many small island nations don't have the capacity to respond and recover from these natural disasters. So as these natural disasters become worse and worse due to climate change, these Pacific Island nations will be especially vulnerable. Thousands of these islands could soon become uninhabitable, leaving many people displaced and forced to relocate. These are the islands that came together to declare their situation a climate crisis and demand major emitters around the world to do something about it. These islands say that as early as 2030, their lands could become uninhabitable. That is literally 10 years from now. I mean, in 10 years from now, these people could have no home and are forced to leave their island. And in the US, we are one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases, contributing to what the Pacific Islands are experiencing right now. We don't have the luxury of more land or mountains to move. We are just focused on our survival and wondering whether we will still be here 30 to 40 years from now. Climate change represents the single greatest threat to the livelihoods of the people living on low-lying, vulnerable countries. Also, marine life have a huge impact on the Pacific Islands, and marine life are getting severely affected by climate change. The world's oceans are now 30% more acidic than they were before the Industrial Revolution. This acidity is dissolving the shells of tiny free-swimming marine snails. And these snails provide food for fish. Also, coral bleaching. 50% of our corals have died in the last 30 years. And what's going to happen in the next 30 years? Is the other half of our corals going to die? Coral reefs are very important for people living along the coast. 25% of marine life rely on coral reefs. The disappearance of our coral will lead to a major food problem, a biodiversity problem, and a mass extinction problem. 500 million to 1 billion people rely on coral reefs as their major food source. And with 93% of that heat trapped in the atmosphere going into our oceans are taking the brunt of climate change. Many kinds of marine life, from coral to fish, struggle to adapt to these warmer waters and often die because of this. And this has devastating impacts on coral reefs, on fisheries, and resources that the Pacific Islanders depend on to survive. Also, when water temperatures rise, the nutritional quality of ocean fish decreases. So the people who rely on these fish as their major food source are not getting the nutrition that they need from these fish anymore. Right now, the three biggest emitters are China, the US, and India. more than 60 countries agreed to reduce their net carbon emissions to zero by 2050. However, the largest emitters, which is China, the US, and India, were not on that list. In the 2015 Paris Agreement, every nation in the world agreed to work together to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the middle of the century. And currently, President Trump has wanted to take us out of that Paris Agreement, saying that it hurts the American job market. However, we cannot legally withdraw from the Paris Agreement till the 2020 elections. Even though President Trump is not working towards climate action, states are working individually to try to meet those Paris Agreement goals. 23 states representing 55% of the American people have formed the United States Climate Alliance, and the founding members are California, New York, and Washington. And I cannot stress this enough. It is so important to vote for politicians who will work towards climate action and who will take climate change seriously, because again, what we do is affecting countries and nations worldwide. So if you want to see what islands are being affected individually, you can definitely go onto 350pacific.org and you can click on any one of those islands and see how climate change is affecting those islands. So I definitely urge you to calculate your ecological footprint, and you would want to go onto footprintcalculator.org. And you can actually see how many Earths it would take if everyone lived like you. And it really puts things into perspective because we only have one Earth. We only have one Earth full of resources for everyone. And so we need to be able to share all of those resources with everyone and live sustainable lifestyles. All right, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.